The Legend of Zelda's timeline is divisive. For some people, it's a total turnoff, something that is perceived as making things more complicated than they need to be. For me, it was what got me interested in revisiting the series 10 years ago. But for most people, it's mostly ignored. The timeline has received kind of a bad reputation as something superficial that Nintendo just threw together to get fans off their back. I don't think that's the case, though. In fact, I know there was a timeline in place before it was confirmed in 2011, and I can prove it. We're going to go through the series' history, in release order, piecing together a timeline based on only the text of the games. Then, at the end, we'll compare it to the official timeline and see if a lack of a confirmed continuity really makes things less complicated. Given that there is literally nothing to say about this game at this point, I think it's a good time to respond to anybody who thinks there was never a timeline in the first place. You see, so this is a sequel to the first game. That is a timeline. Interestingly though, this game serves as more than a chronological follow-up to the first game. We established the existence of multiple Zeldas, while also confirming that the version of Hyrule we've seen so far is after the downfall of a much larger, more established kingdom. We'll get back to that though. For now, what's important is that we have the beginnings of a timeline. A Link to the Past established a lot of series staples. Stuff like Sages, the Lost Woods, Ganondorf, the Master Sword, and whatever else. While also establishing like an absurd amount of lore that later got retconned or forgotten about. With all of that in mind, I imagine you think that I'm about to convincingly tie this game into the timeline, but I can't. I mean, like, I could force it, I could say something about how the game's title says past, and the kingdom is more established, like the one described in the Zelda 2 manual, and like, I even like that idea, but no, the world is bigger and fuller because the SNES is the equivalent of like 280 trillion NESs, and the game wasn't even called A Link to the Past in Japan. You could theorize, and I'm sure people did, but without modern context, it's fair to assume this game doesn't tie into the two before it narratively. We'll just put that over here. Okay, I'm excited for another easy one. So, Link's Awakening is not only confirmed to be a direct sequel outright to A Link to the Past, in the prologue section of its manual, it even uses artwork from A Link to the Past. I do want to mention here, though, separate from tying stuff together, that Link's Awakening is the only game to have its established timeline placement retconned. In 2011, Nintendo said the game came after the Oracle games, which in turn came after A Link to the Past. That didn't make sense, though, since the Link's Awakening manual confirms that Link sails away from Hyrule right after A Link to the Past. This was fixed in the Zelda Encyclopedia 7 years later. 1 point to the Nintendo doesn't care about the timeline crowd, but also minus 1 point because they bothered to fix it, I guess? Anyway, none of that had anything to do with what we're talking about right now. My bad. Link's Awakening goes right here. Okay, so we're at the center of the canon timeline. For those who somehow don't know the plot of the game, the TLDR is that Ganondorf tricks Link into opening the doors to the Sacred Realm, causing him to sleep within it for 7 years, while Ganon takes over Hyrule. Link, afterwards, wakes up as an adult and does regular dungeon sage stuff, finishing the game by defeating Ganon and sealing him away. In the last moments of the game, Zelda uses the Ocarina of Time to send Link back in time, allowing him to relive the childhood he lost. Simple, straight to the point, all loose ends tied up. Nothing obviously ties this game into the games before it, so it gets to sit here by itself. Which is how it'll stay, I imagine, right? Zelda games really like being connected in sets of two, I guess. Majora's Mask begins with the hero of time looking for his lost companion, Navi, who disappeared at the end of the last game after being sent back in time. To make things clear, this is inarguably a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, from Link's perspective after being sent back in time. This means in the world we inhabit, the events of Ocarina of Time did not physically happen. This is important, so keep that in mind for just a minute. We'll put Majora here and move on. Another set of two, another easy one. These games are, at a glance, very removed from everything we've seen so far. The Triforce transports a brand new Link from Hyrule to a brand new kingdom. Zelda stuff happens, and in the linked ending, Link defeats Ganon and saves a brand new Zelda. Pretty cut and dry. These are iterations of the characters we haven't seen before, and we'll put these stacked on top of each other, like, somewhere over here. Whoa, we've got a lot of timelines. I have the least to say about this game, even though I really do love it to death. It was a tie-in for the GBA port of A Link to the Past, so expectations were not high. With that in mind, though, we've got an almost entirely new cast, new important items, and tropes we've never seen before. The game is, unsurprisingly, very short, so it's easy to say that this goes over here by itself for now. Also, check out this game if you can. I love the multiplayer Zelda games. Long ago, there existed a kingdom where a golden power lay hidden. It was a prosperous land, blessed with green forests, tall mountains, and peace. But one day, a man of great evil found the golden power and took it for himself. With its strength at his command, he spread darkness across the kingdom. But then, when all hope had died, and the hour of doom seemed at hand, a young boy clothed in green appeared as if from nowhere. Wielding the blade of evil's bane, he sealed the Dark One away and gave the land light. This boy, who traveled through time to save the land, was known as the Hero of Time. The boy's tale was passed down through generations until it became legend. But then, a day came when a fell wind began to blow across the kingdom. The great evil that all thought had been forever sealed away by the hero once again crept forth from the depths of the earth, eager to resume its dark designs. The people believed that the Hero of Time would again come to save them. But the hero did not appear. Faced by an onslaught of evil, the people could do nothing but appeal to the gods. In the last hour, as doom drew nigh, they left their future in the hands of fate. Wait, what? I thought that Link... Our POV was the land he traveled back to, not the one he left behind. This is an alternate direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, one that takes place in a different timeline. This game starts by establishing a timeline split? Well, surely that's just flavor text, and it doesn't determine the entire plot of the game.
Right? Wrong!
It determines the entire plot of the game. Ganondorf's motivations in this game come entirely from the events of Ocarina of Time. The events that did not happen to Ganondorf, wherever he is in the background of Majora's Mask. This is, indisputably, a timeline split. Put it on the board, who could have known that a branching timeline wasn't something Nintendo randomly came up with in 2011? Other than people who actually played the games, I mean. Sorry, I'll stop rubbing it in. Let's just move to the next game. Hell, maybe these alternate sequels never get followed up on, and so I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh! No, that's okay. A sequel is fine. I just didn't expect it to be Four Swords is all. In all seriousness, this game is very clearly supposed to be sometime after the original Four Swords. Vati is back, and his seal is weakening. Pretty cut and dry. Let's put this game over here as Four Swords' apparently inevitable sequel, and move on to the next one. Oh! No, that's okay. A prequel is fine. I just didn't expect it to be Four Swords is all. This game gives us an origin for Vati and the Four Sword, giving us our first timeline with 3 games. Does anyone else think it's weird that the Link to the Past pack-in game was the first game to be given a sequel and prequel? It's just me? Whatever, this game rocks, and we're doing an absolutely stellar job simplifying these games, aren't we? Okay, they're doubling down on the split timeline thing. This game is a direct sequel to Majora's Mask, so much so that it shows us what happens to Ganondorf after the events of Ocarina of Time, while also having the Hero of Time still present. I think it's actually really interesting that because of this game, we get to see 2 variations of the same Ganondorf. In Wind Waker, he's presented as very empathetic, to the point of potentially even being correct, while Twilight Princess Ganondorf was punished for crimes he didn't even actually commit, and is presented as cartoonishly irredeemable because of his reaction to this. If you didn't tie the games together, you would miss this nuance, and on top of that, what the game is trying to actually tell us about him. I'm actually working on a video about Ganondorf where I go into this depth. Hit buttons down there if you're interested in that kind of thing. Anyway, sorry, back to what we were doing. Twilight Princess goes right here. So, Phantom Hourglass follows directly after the events of the Wind Waker, and we even get to see the same characters. I have more to say, but I'm going to save it until after we talk about. This game is so good. And it's also another sequel, this time set after Phantom Hourglass. We're onto a new Link in Zelda, and we're in a new setting, but Nico is still here. Recapping with that in mind, though, we now have Ocarina of Time, Timeline Split, Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks. That is one entire timeline from Nintendo's thrown together official one that we've pieced together using only the explicit text of the games. Timeline split and all. I'm going to keep going until we're caught up on releases, but while I do that, I really do want our anti-timeline fans out there to think about the fact that this is even possible. This one's at the beginning. No, I'm kidding, we'll talk about it. Skyward Sword gives us context for Hyrule's prehistory. It explains Zelda's connection to the goddess, shows the creation of the Master Sword, and even gives us a narrative explanation for why evil is constantly at the kingdom's door. This game, unambiguously, was trying to tell us what we already knew. Zelda games are part of an interconnected, overarching chronology. What it doesn't do, though, is tell us exactly how the timeline comes together after this, meaning I get to put Skyward Sword all the way up here at the top and move on to the next game. For the first time in a minute, I get to add to a little timeline chain we abandoned like 20 years ago. A Link Between Worlds is not only a spiritual successor to A Link to the Past, but also a literal one, showing us the same iteration of Hyrule at some point in the future after Link's Awakening. It doesn't do a whole lot to fill in the gap between there and here, but that's cool. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. Just because I've spent however long ranting about the lore and the overarching story of these games, doesn't mean I hate the idea of just, like, connecting 2 games for a superficial reason. It's fun to me, I don't know. Anyway, we'll put A Link Between Worlds right here and move over to what is unironically my favorite 2D Zelda game. What? I just said I don't care if the story is superficial. Triforce Heroes was developer Grezzo's first attempt at making their own Zelda game, rather than a remake, and I think they did really good. This game really is one of a kind in the series, even among the other multiplayer entries, and I think it's super underrated. As for timeline placement, this game straight up doesn't tell us, while actually referencing things from contradicting timelines. Triforce Heroes is the real version of what people think Breath of the Wild is. Just mashed together stuff from the series' history, where you're not supposed to think about it too hard. It gave us the second instance of the fierce deity in the entire series, though, so I think that it was worth it. Triforce Heroes sits by itself over here for now. Oh my god, we're almost there. Okay, so you guys are gonna yell at me here, but for the purpose of this video, Breath of the Wild goes after Twilight Princess. The story directly references it, and in this timeline we've set up,
whether skyward bound, adrift in time, or steeped in the glowing embers of twilight,
follow point for point a chain of games we've established. Outside of non-canon costumes and minor references for named locations, this is literally the only time the game tells you anything about the games before it. What, you'd prefer that the game be left without any solid timeline connections? We have that at home. It's the actual official timeline, which Nintendo for some reason insists is a separate entity from Breath of the Wild. If you wanted Breath of the Wild to be a standalone entry with only minor references, we have to pretend Fi isn't literally in the game, but also you should love Nintendo's established canon, because that's what they said. Breath goes here, just a few more games. This is a Breath of the Wild sequel. If you missed that or disagree somehow or whatever, then I just don't know what to tell you. And before somebody says, oh, nobody disagrees that Tears of the Kingdom is a Breath of the Wild sequel, think about every time you've ever heard someone say there is no timeline, or that these are all retellings of the same legend. Even as someone who liked Triforce Heroes, Grezzo had a crazy glow-up going from there to here. This is like the most creative and full 2D game in the series. I do have to admit here that I haven't finished the game quite yet, but from what I've played, plus some asking around, it doesn't seem like the game has any apparent enough timeline leanings to not end up by itself. If I'm wrong about that though, you can pretend I put it wherever it goes, because that doesn't really change my overall point.
Enormously so.
So, this isn't out yet, but if Nintendo isn't lying to us, they're letting Koei Tecmo take a stab at a canon story, which takes place during Tears of the Kingdom's imprisoning war. That puts this game somewhere solidly between here and here. That's not very noteworthy on its own, but it begs the question. If we're not letting Nintendo tell us if or how the games are connected, who's to say what's a spin-off and what's canon? No timeline means that on top of this, we have to put Age of Calamity here, Link's crossbow training here, the Tingle games over here, Hyrule Warriors here? And then, where do I put Rift of the Necrodancer? Or Soul Calibur? Smash Brothers? Fortnite? This video has been building to these two things. The timeline is mostly obvious, especially the 3D games, and the timeline does not make things more complicated. My proof? Look what happens if you just follow the text of the games. Skyward Sword at the beginning, Ocarina of Time before a timeline split, the rest of the 3D Zeldas end up exactly where they're supposed to. In fact, most of our stray mainline games do tie into something, and if tying them all together to make a cohesive narrative to build off of means sometimes Nintendo has to say, oh yeah, after this game Link actually went over here, then whatever, I'm okay with that. As for the timeline overcomplicating things, does this really look harder to follow than this? Or this? It's inarguable that most of the games in the series have games they're related to, and once you accept that, who cares if they stretch stuff a little bit? In comparison to other series I'm a fan of, Zelda is genuinely very simple to follow. And then, if you're not interested in the overarching story, that's cool. You are more than welcome to treat Twilight Princess like it doesn't have wider context. And I'll be over here talking about how the Oracle games are the most important games in the lore, or whatever. And hey, if you ever decide you want to dip your toes into the wider series, you can always hit the buttons down there and catch me doing that exactly later on. I love you. Keep having fun with these games. Okay, thanks. Bye.